welcome back to Real Estate Simplified. I'm joined today by Richard Demille, insurance agent with Desjardins, and Erwin Cito, professional real estate investor. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Seth.
So, Rich, right now the market's very, very hot, and the last thing on people's mind is insurance when they're putting offers in on a home. So, what are some common mistakes people are making when it comes to insuring their homes that they're moving into?
Just really making sure the guts of the house are updated. So when I say the guts of the house, big things I look for is like electrical. So if we're buying older homes, even if it's for a flip or even knocking a house down, what concerns me is if you get a house that has knob and tube wiring, per se. That's just something that most insurance companies won't even touch. Or you've got a condition of maybe 15 or 30 days to replace the whole wiring system. So that's just something to consider when you're buying a house, if that's something worth it, right?
Yeah, and right now with not a lot of people doing home inspections, do you as an insurance broker, are you asking those questions before the closing date? Of being like, hey, what kind of wiring is in the home? Like what kind of plumbing? All those questions?
Absolutely, great question. We do a thorough questionnaire where we go through all those aspects of the house, and if we have certain red flags that come up like electrical, other questions might be water heater where we have an issue. Water heater comes down to age, so if the water heater is over a certain age, we might have to ask that homeowner to have it replaced as soon as they move in. Yeah. Why? They leak. So we just want to make sure, for the benefit of the purchaser, that they don't have an insurance claim as soon as they turn that key and walk in the house.
Yeah. So then what can a home buyer do now if they are looking to purchase a home? What can they get ready ahead of time so they have all the information you're going to be looking for to make the process as smooth as possible?
So it goes back to what you said, where people are not getting the inspections. I think it's worth it to spend the money and get that inspection, because then you have a general idea of what is older in the house, what's newer in the house, and certain things that you may not even think of, like the roof. Are we going to have issues a couple years down the road with the roof? So that inspection is a key indicator. And if you can't get the inspection, if it's too expensive, find a contractor that's a friend of yours or someone who has a general idea of what's going on in homes.
Yeah. Well, even having a home inspection done after the fact, even though it can't affect the offer process, it's oftentimes the best $450 you can spend, because you learn so much about the property that is now yours.
I agree with you 100%. I've had personal experience buying houses, and those inspections actually, it's funny what they bring up.
Yeah, and typically in more normal markets, flatter markets, buyers will be able to put in an inspection, a condition on inspection, meaning that if they can't insure the property, they can back out of the deal. But now with the market being so hot, that's nowhere to be found. What are some hiccups that some buyers can experience if they don't know anything about the insurability of the property going into that offer?
So once they close on the house, we have the right as an insurance company, and most insurance companies do, to do an inspection on the property. So if the age of the property might trigger, hey, we need to come out and take a look at it and do a thorough inspection. And there could be some hidden costs that the purchaser did not realize. Mm-hmm. And the insurance company also has the right to get off risk. So if we find something that we're not comfortable insuring, and the insurer is not comfortable spending the money to fix it, then we have the right to actually get off risk, which could cause a problem for that purchaser.
Yeah, and in my many years in real estate, we've seen situations where there's a claim that's being put in on the property, and it's an open claim, and that was not disclosed, and now we have insurance issues because the new purchaser can't get insurance on the property. So does it make sense to look up previous claims on the property, and how can somebody go about doing that?
So excellent question. I'm glad you brought that up. We used to be able to get a general idea of house claims that were on a premises. Now we actually can't. And that came down to the legal aspect of it, because as an insurance agent, if I saw there was a claim on a house and I actually mentioned it to a potential purchaser, I could potentially be pulled into a lawsuit where it causes a chain reaction, where someone doesn't buy a house and it actually causes other houses to not close. So they've actually taken the ability away from us because of that, because they just didn't want to put us as the agent into that position. And I know that actually does make it difficult for a purchaser to find out, but once again, it might be going back to the inspection and doing your due diligence to make sure you do see that stuff and make sure it isn't what we call a fix and flip, where there is an issue, it's been fixed, but it's actually not fixed properly.
Yeah, 100%. And that puts the onus back on the seller to disclose those issues, those latent defects that wouldn't otherwise be apparent.
100%.
Yeah. Now, when it comes to renovations, because a lot of people embark on whether it's renovating their current property or adding a basement apartment in a property, there's actually an insurance aspect to that renovation process. So, what sort of questions or what sort of issues should people be looking for when it comes to insurance and renovations?
So, how much are you putting into the renovation is usually the first indicator. Are you going over a certain threshold? Are you going over $5,000? Are you going over $10,000? Or are you doing a full gut? Or are you knocking it down? Because that'll change the questions that I ask, and it also changes the coverages that we put on the house. So if it's a minor renovation, $5,000 to $10,000, what are we doing? Are we doing flooring? Are we redoing a basement? That's important. We need to know if the basement's being redone. Now we have to include that in the insurance if there's a claim. And we have to have the proper insurance. Usually it's water damage that we see in basements. So we have to make sure, do we have the right amount of water damage to not only repair it, but also pull it out if there's a claim and then put it back in. So that's where people quite often forget the actual restoration process of pulling it out. And that's basically it. That's the one main factor I'd see with the renovations.
So how does liability change then during the renovation process? Like, should somebody be worried if they're taking the roof off their house and adding a second story? Does their liability with contractors on site change, and how can they protect themselves?
Absolutely. So friends of mine just built a house, and great question, because the question that came up was, does the contractor take the risk or does the insured actually take the risk? So that was my first question. Who's taking on the risk when they're building the house? So it came back, actually, the insured was taking the risk on. No problem. All we do is do a change on the policy. It's called a builder's risk endorsement that goes onto the policy. And all that does is it takes the liability onto the insurance policy that the insured bought in case the house burnt down halfway through. And it's important because if the builder decides they want to take that on and that's a cost incorporated into that build, no problem, we don't put that on. We just have the insurance on the premises.
Perfect. And how often should a homeowner be reviewing their policy? Because most people get it and then they don't look at it ever again.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. They put it in a drawer and they forget about it, or they see the renewals come through and they don't even look at it. I would say on average, like every 2 years, we should probably take a look at it. Every year is great. A lot doesn't usually change, but I'd say that indicator, if you're doing over $5,000 in renovations or changes to your home, that's an instant call to your agent, to your broker, whoever you're dealing with, just to have a conversation to know, do I have to make any changes? Do I not? If it's a simple countertop, we may not have to do anything, but once again, if you're adding a story, you're adding a garage, or you're doing the basement, that's a different conversation that we should have.
And should people be taking photos of their renovations too, just so in case something does happen?
It's a great idea. You can, absolutely. So if you want to take pictures, I know you can upload pictures to the cloud now, so I think that's probably the safest way to do it. And all that is just to prove stages where you're at in your renovation, because if it does burn or if there's a situation like water damage, then we are technically on risk to repair it up to that point.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where it's something nobody ever wants to think about, but it's always better to be prepared just in the small chance that something does happen down the road.
100%, yeah. You just want to make sure you can sleep at night and you have no worries.
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah. Good stuff. That's Coming up after the break, we'll be finding out how real estate investors are being affected by today's hot market. Stay tuned.